We've just had a discussion of the job characteristics theory, or the job characteristics model. Right? We've looked at skill identity, skill variety, where we do different tasks. Task identity, right, where we see we associate, we see the big picture. We don't just see ourselves as one small cog in a giant machine. The task significance, we see the importance of the thing we do, like nurses. Autonomy, we get to make some of our own decisions, maybe schedule and work and so forth. And then feedback, we find out how good a job we've done. Right? And those things are thought to be all useful things. But when we really look into it, job characteristics theory, people have researched this, has found out a couple things. One, performance seldom is found to correlate with job characteristics. So it might lead to more satisfied workers or less, I guess I should say, fewer unsatisfied workers. But there's really not a strong correlation with output. Right, so it sounds really good in theory, and the workers show some measure of higher satisfaction, but we can't really find a whole lot of measurable increase in performance out of that. Right, although the measures used to test the theory are not always valid and reliable, so it could be a problem with measuring it. Right, I didn't say that. I didn't say it was wrong. I said we're having a hard time finding the increase in performance. Right, and the rule of individual differences is not supported. So. You know, people are different, and it's you can't treat them all the same. So how do you design jobs that take that into consideration? It's a difficult one, right? And this theory is lacking specific guidelines. So you can say you should add task significance to a job, but how you do that, right, is always going to be a challenge. So some things we do know that positively affect jobs, things like participation, right? Giving employees a voice in making decisions about their own work, right? Ask them to decide, right? And that kind of goes hand in hand with empowerment. So participation. So when I used to work I was a quality engineer in a factory making police radios, right? So we were making lots of radios down there, and the production supervisor came out on the factory floor. This is a non-union shop. So there wasn't a union to go through, and he came out on the floor, and as an example of participation, he came to the employees and he said, okay, so Thanksgiving is coming next week, and it was like Friday the week before Thanksgiving, and he said, we need to ship more things this November. We need to ship more radios. So we want to we have to work another day this week. I think the factory is going to be shut down the day before Thanksgiving. They included that as a holiday for some reason. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, all Thanksgiving weekend, we're going to be shut down. And he said, we need an extra day of production. So I would like to ask you workers, it was mostly women in this this electronics assembly area, what day would you like to come to work? I'm thinking you'd like to come to work on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That way you can have 4 continuous days off. And if that's okay with you, that's what we'll put down, but I'm here to ask you your opinion. Well, it was interesting to watch. These women turned to each other. There was a huddle, clearly a huddle. All the heads were in. There was discussion, looking back and forth. This went on for about 30 seconds, and then they came back out, and one of the more senior ladies came with the production manager and said, if it's all the same to you, we would rather work Friday on Thanksgiving weekend than Wednesday on Thanksgiving week. And he said, oh, that wasn't my expectation. It's okay with me. I don't care. Just coincidentally, why Friday? And they said, well, most of us are putting on a Thanksgiving dinner at our house. So Wednesday is when we do our grocery shop, and if we haven't done it already, Wednesday when we're baking our pies and our desserts and all of that, and so we're getting ready for Thanksgiving on Wednesday. So Wednesday is important to us. Friday's Black Shopping Day, and a lot of us don't like that anyway. So if we're going to miss anything, let's miss Black Friday, right? We just won't go shopping. Right? And the manager said, all right, fine. I really don't care either way. I just need an extra day of production out of you, right? So there's an example of participation, right? It really made no difference to the company. It made no difference to the production manager, but he let the workers decide. And the workers, not only did they decide in an appropriate fashion, but they decided in a way that worked for them. So they felt better about their jobs. So rather than coming into work on Wednesday, grumbling about being there, in a bad mood, thinking about all this work they had waiting for them at home, cooking and all that, right? Instead, they came in on Friday because they chose it, right? So they had their Thanksgiving dinner finished, and they were able to do a good job on Friday when they came in. I remember I was bringing a new employee around. He was a veteran guy, but he was new to our company. And I said, watch this conversation. Let's just listen in on this when the production manager was talking. And at the end, when he gives them their choice and they tell him and they have a really nice conversation about it, he looks at me and says, oh my gosh, that's the best production manager I've ever seen in my life. I said, yeah, isn't he? Isn't he? He's a heck of a guy. And those factory workers that work for him, right? There's the way it works in there, right? He's a production manager, the shift supervisors work for him, and then the hourly people work for the shift supervisor, right? So he's not one level but two levels above them, right? They all know him by first name, they all call him Johnny, and he knows a lot of their names and all that, and they just told him what they would prefer because he offered. Now if he didn't offer, they would just come to work and do their thing, but because they got to pick, they were going to come to work and work extra hard, right? So it's an excellent example of participation. We also had a thing in that same factory where like Taylor, Frederick Taylor, if the employees suggested an improvement, usually they were quality improvements, but sometimes they were productivity improvements where we could make more stuff, the employees would get a cut. It wasn't per employee for suggestions, but actually if you put in for every number of suggestions that got accepted, you would get things like a company jacket or, I don't know, some little gratuity, and then at the end, they would total up all the money that was saved, and then the workers would get something out of that. So they would reward the whole group, not individually, which may or may not be the right thing to do, but the employees felt pretty good about this huge conduit to put their suggestions in. All right, that's participation, right? And participation is a good thing, and it takes effort. You have to plan to do this. Everybody's busy at work, particularly the managers. You don't have time to just have people, you don't do it when there's nothing to do, because that never happens, right? So you have to make time for this, right? And empowerment's slightly different. Empowering is enabling workers to make their own work goals, right? Give them some decision-making responsibility. Give them some authority to make those decisions. So the workers, they can decide which workers to do. They can decide sometimes amongst themselves who works where. Sometimes they get to decide their own schedules. Do they make part A first, or do they make part B first, right? Those type things. So they feel some responsibility for their work. They feel much more connected, right? And those can be a powerful motivating factor at work also, right? And they tend to not want to let others down when they make the decision, right? So that's part of it also. So if somebody says, what's the best way to do this, and I tell you what I think, and I say, all right, it's your call, you get to do it, so you decide how to do it. The way I decide, I'm more likely going to make sure that works. Even if it has some issues, I'm going to work through it because I picked it, right? And that's just human nature, so that's good use of human nature. And employees generally like that, as long as they don't feel threatened by the choice. If I tell you, you make the choice, and if you're wrong, I'm going to punish you somehow, that's a negative, and they don't like that, and they'll try to avoid those situations. But if it's a positive arrangement, you do this and you get to pick, and then you get to make it happen, right? And we'll be proud of you, right? That's much more of a positive arrangement, and those typically work.